Well, unlike Florida or Houston or national powerhouse North Dakota State, the Baylor Bears are undefeated. Let's break down game one, Unlocked on Baylor, postgame.
You are Locked on Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bears fans? It's our first edition of the season of Locked on Baylor football postgame. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network, coming at you after a Baylor Bears win. In fact, I've only done, this is now the fourth post-game show for a Baylor football victory. And how about that? And what a day of college football it was for these Texas teams. Tech barely holds on to beat Abilene Christian. I don't know what is going on in the Notre Dame A&M game, by the way, for those of you watching live. It's not on ABC or ESPN Plus that I can stream, but as I look up the score, there's still a minute and a half left. So I have no idea what's going on with that. I don't know if millions of Americans are being shut off from the premier college football game of the day, but at least on my TV, I tried to have it in the background. No can do. ABC does not have it. ESPN Plus does not have it. So apparently they did at the beginning of the game, but that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about Baylor and their 45-3 win over the Tarleton State Texans, and what was convincing fashion for the Bears. It started pretty quickly. They got the ball and scored within a minute and a half. I believe it was minute 23 off the clock. They had that big 39-yard touchdown run from DeQuan Finn, and it was off to the races from there. 28-0 at halftime. The final is 45-3. By the way, how close was I? I had 45-0. I was so close. We just needed them to block another one of those field goals, and I would have been in the money. And by that, I mean I would have earned your guys' respect, finally. But overall, there's not a lot of bad in this performance. I'm going to nitpick a little bit, and I'll do a little bit of that on Monday. But overall, a just dominant defensive performance from the Bears. That's what we kind of expected, especially once Victor Gabalis, the starting quarterback for Tarleton, was out, but still nice to see because, again, we're comparing this to last year's team. And I don't know that you would have saw a performance like that from last year's team. In fact, Long Island, they were in the game for much of it, and that was a much worse FCS opponent than Tarleton is, and still probably a worse opponent, even with Tarleton going to their second and third string quarterbacks. But we had heard from Coach Todd Whitten that they were going to play two backups in this game, so not crazy to see that. But the Bears, they dominated, and they dominated up front on the defensive line, especially against the run, which I wasn't really expecting because they weren't good against the run or the pass up front last year, and Tarleton has an All-American at running back in Kayvon Britton. You remember he went for, I believe, 160 yards last week against McNeese. This week, he goes 13 attempts for 68 yards, had really one big play to put him over 5 yards a carry. But this was not the final numbers kind of lie to you here. They go over 100 yards rushing, but it really wasn't that close. Baylor holds them under 200 yards of total offense. They go for 442 themselves. Even on penalties pretty much. And it was Baylor from the jump. What can I say? I mean, it's a much better feeling than it was last year after week one, when you faced an FBS team and a fairly decent one in Texas State that won 8 or 9 games last year. So a lot better week one for us that were at McLane Stadium to kind of roll to this victory. Do want to talk about DeQuan Finn. This is going to be more of a topic for Monday because I'm trying to be talked down off a ledge a bit when it comes to DeQuan Finn. He obviously electrifies on that first drive, the 39-yard run. He is one of the fastest, one of the best athletes at quarterback in the Big 12. We could see that. And in fact, Dave Aranda said after the game, you wish he had run a little bit more, but there were some not great plays This is a Tarleton defense that did force 4 turnovers in week 1, but it is an FCS defense that you're going against. And he ends up throwing 2 picks on the day. 2 of them were really quite bad. Like I mean, both of them, I guess. They were really underthrown on both of them from what I saw live up in the press box. He could have thrown a few more in that. I am thinking of it as getting adjusted to a new offense and maybe pressing a little bit, but this is a guy who's played a lot of games. I don't think he's pressing. I think it's more of just getting used to how this offense looks at game speed, because it is a lot different from the one he ran at Toledo. So I think a quite up and down performance from DeQuan Finn in that week 1. Sawyer Robertson comes in, throws a beautiful touchdown pass. By the way, he only gets 1 drive. He had another pass or 2 that should have been picked off as well, like DeQuan Finn did. But overall, Finn goes 14 to 22 for just under 200 yards, a couple of touchdown throws, a touchdown rush with a couple of picks in there as well. How about the day for my man Jaden Pete? Oh man, the numbers are not great for Jaden Pete, who started the game at quarterback for Tarleton. He went, 1 of 8 for negative yards in the second half last week when he had to come in the game, and he finishes 0 for 2 with a pick. So yes, completed more passes to Baylor than he did to Tarleton. Looked like he had an ankle injury, but a negative 100 rating on the day for Jaden Pete. Not terrific. Katron Jackson was the leading receiver for the Bears, and it was 2 plays, 69 yards, a touchdown. That touchdown coming from Sawyer Robertson, had another big play, and basically the same kind of play when DeQuan Finn was still in the game as well. The run game for Baylor, did not think it was terrific tonight, to be honest with you guys. They end up rushing for 164 yards, which is not bad. It's about 50 yards above their average from last year when they were 13th in the conference in rushing yards per game. So that raw number is better, but you look up and down the list, and Richard Reese goes for a little over 4 yards a carry. Dawson Pendergrass goes for 3.5 yards a carry. Neither of them get to the 100-yard mark. And I expect against Tarleton a little bit better production than that in the run game. I expect someone to have 7 yards a carry and have 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns. That's especially with how much Baylor was trying to establish the run in this game. We did hear from Richard Reese after the game. He said that Baylor really only put about 50 to 60% of their playbook out there, which is not surprising when you have an FCS opponent that is laboring like Tarleton in week 1, and then have a conference opponent in a non-conference game in week 2, a team that is as good as Utah is. So up and down from the offense, typically pretty great from the defense. Caden Jenkins did not get picked on. He had, I thought, a really good game. Jackie Marshall, I thought, had an excellent game, and I really like watching him play. I really do. If you are in the stadium, especially, but it also works on TV, focus in on number 0 for a drive or a half or whatever it may be, and just focus on number 0 on defense, because he is a problem, man. Whether it is passing downs or running downs, he deserves a lot of attention. He gets a lot of attention from the offensive line. In fact, he drew 2 holding calls in the game tonight. He is a hard hitter. He is deceptively quick. I really like watching Jackie Marshall play. I will go out and say that. I was also a big fan of Keaton Thomas coming into this year and coming into this game. He gets the pick 6 in the first quarter that makes it 21-0. So a lot to be happy about on the defensive side of the ball. Again, as I said all through this week, there's not going to be much positive that you're going to learn, but loved what we saw out of those guys. Alinus Noel got the lion's share at nose tackle, which I was concerned about coming into this game. Cooper Lands was listed as the starting nose tackle. nothing against Cooper. He's just not nearly the size of Linus Noel. Linus Noel is a nose tackle, okay? He comes in at about 340 pounds. Cooper Lands is about 290. It's not the same. Speaking of running backs, by the way, before I get too away from that, start going into the comments, did we need the oars? Did we need the oars on the depth chart at running back? Richard Reese and Dawson Pendergrass were the only ones of the ones who got carries at running back. Someone named Hagman at the end got some. Don't know if he's kin to Larry Hagman, J.R. Ewing. But it was those two guys. Bryson Washington was in street clothes, and Dominic Richardson was dressed, but did not play. Did not play a single snap in this game. So why don't we just say it's Richard Reese and Dawson Pendergrass? Why can't we just say that from the start? I don't know. But liked what you saw from Sawyer Robertson off the bench, like I mentioned earlier. Again, up and down from DeQuan Finn. No one, I think, really excited at the wide receiver position. Michael Trigg had a touchdown at the tight end position. He was in the slot, lined up a lot. But let's see what you guys thought after this week 1 win. Do you think they held back after getting an early lead? It might just be coping. I really think they did. I did. And I, like we heard from Richard Reese, I think they were holding back a lot of the game, to be quite honest with you guys. I'm not saying they're going to go out and just score 50 the next game, but I did think they were holding us back. They were holding a little bit back. Anyway, Cameron, good name. I did talk a little bit about this. Do you think DeQuan Finn's interceptions worry you? I'm not going to lie. It did a little bit. It was definitely kind of the reputation of his career in terms of he'll give you a lot, especially in the scramble game and in the run game. He's going to make a lot of plays for you, but he's going to take a lot of chances too. And that's what's going to come with it. But yeah, if this was a Big 12 game, I think he would have threw 4 picks. So that's obviously not a good performance when you look at it that way. But he did make plays, a couple in the passing game, a couple in the running game, and Dave Aranda was quite confident in him. But yeah, that did worry me a little bit. We'll see next week. That's going to be obviously a massive test that we're going to be talking about all week. Scotty B, at least we didn't lose in week 1 like last year. Exactly. Houston did, as he mentions here. Lost by 3 touchdowns to Vegas. Oh my goodness, man. That's embarrassing. That's a bad loss. They're going to be good at basketball, though. We'll just say that. And yeah, Tech won by a point. I didn't see the end of that. I'm guessing that was a failed 2-point conversion from ACU. If someone knows that, oh, yep, Scotty B way ahead of me. ACU went for 2 after the touchdown. Should have done the extra point. Oh, man. Yeah, it feels like Finn struggles with arm strength. Yes. He was never had a cannon for an arm. You don't need to be necessarily. But yeah, the 2 picks were way underthrown from my vantage point. Pinoy Coinmaster. That is interesting. A nice test for Tarleton with that Finn run and 21 points the first quarter. Get ready for Utah. That is the real test. We're going to be talking about, I highlighted this because we're going to be talking about them all week. Trevor Lee says the offensive line looked better than last year, gave Finn more time to pass than they would for the quarterbacks last year, but they looked like they struggled to get a push. Yeah, I don't think the push was terrible. I think the problems, most of them in the run game, came from that holding back a little bit. But yeah, the run blocking was not awesome. I didn't think it was terrible. Pass protection was a problem last year, and it looked better tonight. I saw a few different combinations of offensive lines out there. It wasn't just sticking with one 5-man unit, which I think in week 1 against Tarleton is fine, because we mentioned the guys that came in after spring practice and that you do need to find that chemistry eventually. But this is where you can do it as well. This can work like a preseason game would in the NFL. So I'm interested to see that next week, because if I recall correctly, when I talked to JT Wistersill of Locked On Utes, that was the pass rush and defensive line is not a strong point for Utah, if I'm remembering that correctly. So we'll talk to him this week as well, probably. So it did look better. But it needs to it needs to gel a little bit more. And that's what you're going to see through this first month here before you really get into the heat of battle, which comes in the middle of October when you get that murderer's row. You get Utah next week, which is obviously pretty tough. But then it's Air Force, which played Merrimack College today. Then you've got Colorado is winnable. Not Utah. BYU is winnable. And then you start getting in that Iowa State range, and it gets pretty tough from there. So I'm not saying the whole first month is a preseason, but you can start to figure some things out, figure out what personnel is going to work, what plays are going to work. And hopefully you've just got a loss or two before you really head into that beef of that schedule. And I think you could only have one loss. I think that's a fair assumption. But then again, we don't know a lot about this team. We don't know a lot about this team after tonight. We're going to learn a lot more next week, throwing it into the fire. So anyway, for those of you who were in the chat, appreciate it. For you guys following along live, please do, if you're watching afterwards, get involved in the comment section down below, because we'll talk about this a lot more on Monday. So let me know what you thought about the game. If there was something I missed that you would like to talk about from this game. Baylor was awesome on third down. I want to see what the final numbers were on that, but that was something I was tracking throughout the game. It ends up being 10 of 15. I remember it was 7 of 12 at one point. That's still pretty darn good. If my math is correct, that's 67%, which I will take any day of the week, especially when you hold a team to 2 of 14 on third down on the other end. In fact, Tarleton wins time of possession, but Baylor wins the game by 42 points. Thank you guys so much for joining. It's good to start the season 1-0. It's really good, guys. It's a lot better than last year, where I was like sitting in my car after the game at 10:30 at night thinking, oh my God, what is happening to this program? Look, it doesn't mean they're going to win 9 games, but it's better to start the season with a win than the alternative. And it's better to start with a blowout win than whatever Tech had to go through. One more thing, because Trevor makes a good point in here. The stadium was not full tonight. It was not at capacity. Not unexpected, because of the season they had last year, because it's week 1 against Tarleton. But the students, they filled it. They filled it big time. The line was huge, man. That was so cool to see. What an awesome big freshman class that Baylor has. And they did stick around for most of the game, the students. And look, that's better than nothing. But yeah, it was a really good crowd there from the student standpoint tonight, and I really love to see that. And hopefully that will get better throughout the season, because Dave did talk about that after the game too. He was like, the energy when this place is going is great, but we've got to get out there and prove that we're cool enough to sit with at the lunch table, is the way he put it. So was a good crowd tonight, and I'm hoping that it will get better throughout the season. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for making it your first listen today. And every day we're going to have a full breakdown of this game on Monday as I start to process this a little more and see what's good and what's bad from this performance. So hope you guys will tune in then on your favorite program, Locked On Baylor.